Bill Maher was doing his show and he made a mistake by allowing a progressive on who challenged him. Crystal Ball was on and she did a fantastic job. But get a load of Bill Maher's theory or strategy for the Democratic primaries.
I think this might be one of those years where it's the discussion Mike and I were having. It's that they can't get over that centrist versus socialist thing. So Elizabeth Warren at some point takes Bernie's voters, he drops out. It's Warren and Biden. And they go to the convention and it's deadlocked. This has happened before in American politics and they need a compromise candidate. I'm looking hard at Amy Klobuchar. You know why? Because this is not an insult to Amy Klobuchar, I like you, but when they put generic Democrat on the ballot, they win.
I think there was a genetic Democrat on the ballot the last time around.
Yeah.
Didn't do so well.
She was pretty generic. And she was an establishment candidate like Biden is. But look, I love that they went to Crystal Ball's face. They're like, Bill, what on God's green earth are you talking about? And she straightened him out in the rest of the show.
She killed it. She killed it. Like she mentioned Hillary Clinton, mentioned that the centrists are losing. She did a great job. So I usually wouldn't tell people to go watch Bill Maher because a lot of the time the discussion is infuriating and there are no progressives on the panel. But finally, there's some representation on that panel. And again, Crystal did a great job.
Yeah, and so, but the point that I really was amused by and wanted to point out was that in Bill Maher's mind, Klobuchar is a compromise candidate. Are you, like, really? Is he paying any attention? Like, we talk, sometimes he feels like he's a little out of touch, right? He's getting almost Biden-esque. Klobuchar.
Totally.
Klobuchar.
I mean,
look, in this case, I don't mean Klobuchar as in like she's an unacceptable candidate. I mean, she's not at all the midpoint.
She doesn't offer anything. What is she offering?
No, that's fine.
And that's what he likes about her.
Yeah, but that's a separate conversation, which we'll get to next. But Klobuchar is not the midpoint between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden. No, Klobuchar is incredibly close to Joe Biden's policies.
Yes.
So that's a weird thing to suggest. I mean, if he were to suggest Julian Castro or Cory Booker, maybe you're having
Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris was pretending to be the midpoint,
That's true.
right?
Yeah.
And so, but even so, if you haven't caught on to that, I could understand picking Kamala Harris. But Klobuchar has always been on the moderate corporate establishment side of the equation. So it's like saying, hey, look, if you don't like John Delaney, you might want to go with a compromise candidate like John Hickenlooper. Right? No, what? They're both conservative Democrats. Doesn't make any sense.
I just find it strange. I don't think he was really thinking in terms of finding a good middle ground. I think what he was looking for was a candidate who doesn't ruffle any feathers, doesn't stir the pot, is possibly a woman, so they're, maybe check that box. I don't know.
Well, he talked about that, yeah.
Yeah, and so like his way of thinking, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, 2016, I don't know how other people felt about it or what type of internal emotions they went throughout that entire process. But that year had a lasting effect on me. And the fact that Bill Maher also went through that same process as all of us did and came out the other end with, no, we gotta keep doing what Hillary Clinton did. That was a winning strategy. Like where were you? She lost this centrist, almost right-wing Democrat on a lot of issues, lost to an unhinged lunatic who had a show like a talk show. Like this, she lost to Trump. How are you gonna want more of the same from the Democratic Party? I just think, look, Bill Maher's rich. Bill Maher doesn't like people on the left who are pushing for real change, bold change. They want systemic change. Maher doesn't want that. Why would he want to change a system that's worked out really well for him?
Yeah, look, he used to push boundaries way back in the day, but here we are, right? And so, first of all, on the woman issue, he said, quote, she's a woman that moves a lot with the wokesters.
Oh my God.
Oh, Jesus Christ, man. I mean, why don't you tell a story about how you faced off against Corn Pop while you're at it? Okay, I don't know if you know this, but the majority of the country is women, and it works well with them even if they're not wokesters. So like in his mind, a woman is like such a fringe thing. Like, hey, I guess if you're woke, you're into female candidates.
Yeah.
Right? But when Hillary Clinton, who was a massively establishment candidate, ran, he's like, no, she's cool. She's fine. Right? I'm willing to give a lot of money to Hillary Clinton.
Well, I think there's also an issue with woke culture, right? I mean, I think part of the problem is usually the members of the woke society are privileged young white people who do like this false outrage over everything on behalf of disenfranchised groups. And so they, in my opinion, push for tokenism. And as a woman, I find it insulting to pick a candidate just because you want to check a box, right? To me, it's far more important to have a woman who actually represents the voices of disenfranchised groups, including women who are still dealing with discrimination in the workplace. Not just some random woman who thinks throwing staplers at her employer or employees is the right way to go.
So, yeah, I don't know why this is such a complicated issue. There's a way of looking at it in a macro way and a micro way. So in the macro picture, do we want more diversity and representation in our Congress? Yes, they're supposed to be our representatives. So it'd be great since the African Americans are underrepresented, women are underrepresented, and it'd be great if we had more representation and we could work towards that, organize towards that, et cetera. On a case-by-case basis, election-by-election basis, you don't have to support someone who's a woman just because they're a woman or a minority just because they're a minority. Otherwise, it leads to the absurdity of the Republicans going, Ben Carson, and I'm gonna use him as a shield, so I'm good to go. Betsy DeVos. Am I supposed to vote for them because they're women and black? Of course not. You'd have to be an idiot to think that way.
Because while it might seem better to put someone in a position of power based on their race, you're still making, or gender, you're still making a decision based on their race or gender, right? So whether you're discriminating against them or putting them in a position that maybe they're not qualified for, you're still thinking about it in the wrong way. You want the right representation. You want someone who actually fights for disenfranchised groups of people. Klobuchar doesn't fight for anyone. Klobuchar fights for herself.
Yeah, if you organize in the right ways, a representative sample will bubble up anyway, just like we did with Just Democrats.
Anti-YT, by the way. Like there was never a quota here. There was never a we need to check some boxes. And last Friday, our panel, both panels on Friday were all women. First hour we had a transgender woman. We have Maythal Hassan, who's from Syrian descent. You have me, I'm Armenian. It's just. But there was never a, hey, you know what? We really need to check the transgender box. It just organically happens because you want to include various diverse voices in the discussion. It makes the show better.
Yeah, and so the last quote from Maher is, even the centrists in the Democratic Party are pretty far left, he says. What? So he's now totally internalized Republican talking points that, hey, the right wing might be far right, but my God, even the centrists in the Democratic Party are pretty far left. That's not remotely true. No, the centrists in the Democratic Party like Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein, et cetera, are massively right wing on economic issues.
Yes.
So they don't want to hopefully discriminate against gay people, black people, et cetera. But even then, they were super late to being in favor of gay marriage. I mean, really, really late, right? But even if you give them that on economic issues, they vote for tax cuts for the rich, as they did under Bush, Feinstein did. They vote for the wars, Biden did, Hillary Clinton did, Feinstein did. I can go on and on and on. To say that the centrists in the Democratic Party are pretty far left, that means you're not remotely progressive. And so that's where we are. And look, I love HBO. I watch a huge amount of their shows. I usually watch shows on HBO just because they're on HBO, because that's how much I trust their judgment.
Yeah.
I'll at least give it a chance. But if your idea of a real firebrand progressive these days is Bill Maher, man, Joe Biden isn't the only one fighting Corn Pop. Right? I mean, that is really outdated stuff right there.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, the rest of their programming is excellent.
Yeah.
Look, and his show is fine if he at least gives progressives an opportunity to be part of the discussion. And he's been actively preventing that. I don't know what happened with Crystal Ball. Like, she somehow slipped through the door.
And he has Michael Moore on every once in a while. He's like, so I'm covered. I'm covered. I'm friends with some progressive celebrities. By the way, you're also friends with Ann Coulter. And you unleashed that into the world.
Yep.
And you thought it was cute and clever. Not so cute and not so clever. And it's one thing to have the Ann Coulters of the world that you aided and abetted for years upon years. It's another thing to have them and almost never have progressives on.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and he'll say, what do you mean? I have centrist Democrats on all the time and they're already too far left. I think you proved my point. On the go, don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.